Call this meeting in order. It's City Common Council meeting. It is Monday, June 28th, 2021 at 6 p.m. We are in the council chambers. The agenda has been posted. The meeting has been notified. Please call roll.
Christopher Frederickson.
Here.
Thomas Barnett.
Here.
Andrew Larson. Carrie Michalowski.
Here.
Thomas Kelly.
Here.
Gerald Anderson.
Here.
David Holt.
Here.
Eileen Daniel.
Here.
Ryan Rossing.
Here.
All please stand. First up on the thing is public comments as received by the mayor, city clerk, and or council. I'm going to start by asking council if they received any. And then Eileen.
This was actually sent in by a constituent of Alderman Anderson, but he's asked me to read it. It's from David Walters. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Walters, and I have a concern that I would appreciate your attention on. I'm curious if any of the new proposed developments have agreed to make portions of available housing accessible as affordable or low-income housing. Many areas with housing problems are doing so to ensure that this issue is being addressed and that we aren't just creating more vacation homes for the wealthy. As the housing crisis is closing business doors and many of your constituents face potential homelessness in your community due to lack of housing, I ask that affordable housing options be considered in every step of development. We don't need more condos and townhouses for those who already have enough. We need affordable options for those in our community who support our local businesses, who have lived here for generations and tried to raise their families here. And we need it 10 years ago. Please don't forget us as you grant tax incentives and breaks to developers who wish to develop in our community. Thank you for your time and attentiveness to this matter.
Jeff Verdun. 2 O's throws me off. Nope, you're going to press it. Yeah, there you go.
Good evening. Again, I'm Jeff Verdorn. I'm the Executive Director of the United County Economic Development Corporation. In my role, I facilitate and push for economic development throughout Oneida County. I would like to strongly recommend that you approve item L in your new business agenda this evening, the hotel study. In addition, I would recommend creating a significant sense of urgency in completing this study as soon as possible. Why? First, the city of Rhinelander is clearly becoming a destination city, not just a pass-through city, something you should all take great pride in. Things like the Dome, local business expansions and construction, things like the just announced L&M Fleet Supply, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, healthcare expansions, other businesses that I'm currently working with, plus an increase in tourism and relocations to our area have dramatically increased the demand for hotel rooms. A developer will not start a project without a study that confirms the need, additional rooms. The cost of the study is generally reimbursed by the developer once a project is approved. So thus there's very little risk to the city. Only a tremendous opportunity, but it is very, very time sensitive. Zach has just received a hotel study proposal designed by a very reputable research firm who knows Rhinelander very well and is also guided by interested hotel chains. I recommend that you pursue this study immediately and not get caught up in months of requests for proposals and the actual analysis of those proposals. My fear is you'll risk losing a full construction season. Costs from these research firms are very similar, and the key is to find someone familiar with the area and has credibility with the hotel chains. I believe you have that in this proposal. Most importantly, what is driving this sense of urgency is that I'm working on a similar project in the town of Three Lakes to replace Oneida Village that burned down a couple of years ago. Three Lakes completed a hotel study earlier this year, confirming the need for rooms. While the town and city would remain fully independent, and this is a key point, a developer may be able to find significant synergies in doing the projects jointly, making both projects much more attractive. You are also going to be competing with larger municipalities with much more resources to offer just to get a developer's attention. These possible synergies may be enough to secure a project. So finally, in closing, this study will be focused on the need for new rooms, not cannibalizing existing rooms. So this has the potential to be a big win for Rhinelander. Thank you very much.
Michael Osterdahl.
Hello, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Michael Osterdahl. I purchased Sackett's December 29th. We've had a little delay on making the front of the building, and that's mainly because we're still waiting for the windows. But last I heard, we should be getting them the third week of July, and that week there, we'll start putting a new face on the building there. Just wanted to let you know what was going on with it. I've bought other properties here in town. Maybe you remember how bad 608 Albin looked. I'm the one who fixed that one up. 923 River, 5183 Pioneer Street. I'm the one who took those ugly buildings and made them better. So that's what I'm trying to do with Sackett's. Thank you.
Carrie Kirschbaum.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Kirschbaum. I represent the Northwoods Land Trust, which owns and manages the Holmboe State Natural Area that is adjacent to and accessed through the Riverview Hall property. I'm just here as an interested party tonight. As you can imagine, there are potential impacts of a development to a state natural area when you have that type of use right next to it. I've shared the potential impacts with the developers and with the zoning committee, and I just want to let you know, to update you and let you know that we are working cooperatively with the developer to put some protections in place and to ensure that there's access to Holmboe through the Riverview Hall property. I've shared some information about the management of Holmboe, the concerns there. Reggie just today sent me a draft of the restrictive covenants that will be put on, and it's an initial draft, but it's a really good, we see it as a very positive first step, and we intend to continue collaborating on that. So I'm here basically just to ensure that the issue of the protection of Holmboe and the access to Holmboe remains on your radar every step of the way through this, because it's a community asset that's really valued, and I think it needs to be part of the discussion. I'm also here to make myself available for answering any questions about Holmboe and to encourage you to ensure that the protections and the access, that all gets kind of finalized concurrently with the zoning and approvals process so that it's all done in one felt swoop. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Todd McEldowney.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Todd McEldowney, and I live on 705 Lakeshore Drive. I'm here on behalf of the Rhinelander Police and Fire Commission, and we would just like to raise some concerns as far as the proposed city organizational chart. We feel that protective services is very important to our community, and certainly it is obvious that our community is growing, and it is important that we have the best police and fire that we possibly can. We are concerned about the fact that the city's proposed organizational chart was not received until just before the last meeting by the representatives of the police and the fire departments. There are concerns because of what we consider to be glaring omissions as far as the position of assistant fire chief, and the fact that as far as the patrol sergeants for the police department do not have a number of sergeants that are going to be part of that organizational chart. So we just would like to emphasize, as will Josh, once he has an opportunity to address you all, our concerns, and we don't need to reduce staff at this point. We feel very strongly about protective services, and we would hope that you would also. Thank you very much.
All right. Moving forward, as there's no more public comments, the mayor's comments, I made a proclamation for Rhinelander High School Baseball Day as they made it onto sectionals and represented really well, group of kids. Then also, just this morning, we received notice that Mark Tauscher was on ESPN, the radio this morning, and he was talking about Rhinelander, and he was very, very fond of Rhinelander. He was up here for the weekend and said the downtown looked beautiful and it was a gem. So when I heard this from the southern part of the state, I had to pass it on. So it's kind of slick. Mark Tauscher, that was the Packer tackle that. Moving on, meeting minutes. Approval of the June 14th, 2021 council meeting minutes.
I move approval of the June 14th council minutes with the note that the in new business paragraph A, Holmboe is spelled Holmboe.
Halt, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question as well. On the ones putting charges on properties, the motions where we put charges on properties for demolitions, is it, I don't know, it sort of seems to me that the amount ought to be listed here. Or do we just figure, well, that's in the resolution somewhere and that's all we need? That's just a question, is whether, what needs to be in the minutes on that kind of thing.
I'd ask our Roberts parliamentarian.
Yeah, no, you only have to note that the resolution indicated that the amount was there. The purpose of minutes is to give you the resources to know what happened, not the details. The details can be obtained from the actual public document. In this case, the resolution is a public document. So otherwise, you know, you'd have to take basically a videotape of the entire meeting and transcribe it. I don't think anybody's asking for that.
Well, I'm just picking up from the fact that on a lot of other things, like a contract or a change order or something like that, we spell out the amount each time in the minutes.
Yeah, Robert's Rules of Order, if you read on minutes, it says you have to put enough information there that you can know what happened. And you also have to indicate who voted for and who voted against. That's what's required of Robert's Rules. But you also are able to set your own rules. I mean, every deliberative body can set their own rules saying, I want this or I want that in my minutes. So there's nothing magical other than we've adopted Robert's Rules as our fallback position.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Reports from boards, commissions, and committees, there are none. Public hearings, there are none. Ordinance, there are none. Ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 2021-7, map amending the zoning change for 903 Boyce Drive, RH 9107-0602. Presented as zoning is CB, or Community Building District. Proposed zoning is PD, which is a planned development district, for the purposes of locating a multi-family housing and student housing, restaurant, retail, and office space. We had the public hearing on this one already, so at this point it's ready for consumption. I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. Are we approving?
Yeah, he's laughing at me for saying consumption, but that's okay.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2021-7, the map amendment zoning change for 903 Boyce Drive, RH 9107-0602, from CB, Community Building District, to PD, Planned Development District.
Halt, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Unfinished business from previous council meetings. Discussion action item, discuss the finding of the snowmobile crossing meeting.
So at 5 o'clock this evening, Mark Barden and I met with some of the members of the Snowmobile Club Board of Directors regarding the decision to disallow or to further uphold the current ordinance where there is not a permitted crossing of North Stevens Street at Shawnee and Menominee. It's clear that the Snowmobile Club lacks really any viable alternatives at this time, some in part due to unwilling landowners to the north of 17 to allow crossing activity to occur on their property. It's come to my attention that there might be an opportunity to work with some of those landowners due to some relationships they might have with the city versus directly with the club. So we're going to explore that, but at this time, their preferred route and mode of crossing to get up to the much larger system is at that intersection. However, we did commit ourselves to continuing to look at the alternatives, both a little bit at the city's level through some relationships and then potentially at the club level. So the timing is of the essence because they begin soliciting donations and sponsorship for their maps. And so we'll have to have some form of determination made sooner rather than later as to what those options or alternatives exist, if there are any. So that's the update, I guess, on that front for the benefit of the group. So we hope that there might be a positive resolution to be had with some adjoining property owners, maybe in an alternative route. And really, it comes down to, I think, a matter of safety at that intersection, crossing at that angle, and not to mention the pavement impacts that get negatively impacted by snowmobiles running the roads.
Any questions? Gerald?
How soon is sooner? When you say sooner rather than later,
Well,
what kind of deadline do you have?
It's really up to them to find the alternative to request of the city. At this point, the request would still stand that we recognize that crossing exists in our ordinance, but right now it's not an allowable crossing. I did learn that, and I'm not sure if some of the more tenured council members remember, that the group had come before the city annually to request crossing either at Menominee or North Chippewa. There were two alternatives. It really changed when Aspirus expanded their clinic and impacted their use of their property. So we may want to look back at some of our historical records, but they would need permission from the body to cross at that intersection if the council wanted to entertain that. But in terms of the timeline, we committed a meeting within 2 weeks before, so we have some form of an update at the next council meeting.
My question, I guess, is this came up because we wanted to put some protection on that, and was that part of a change order on the Stevens Street project or something like that?
It was, but it's a moot point now, unless we decide we want that part of the project. I think the determination we've made is it's not exactly cost effective to use that contract for that purpose, so it likely would be cheaper to do it on our own. So again, that I guess would be a further consideration.
Zach, how far north are we talking that the landowners are maybe not wanting that up there?
They
how
had
far north of
previously
that?
had some permission to cross some property at the intersection of Stevens and the bypass, this Highway 17. So I think the question is, will they be able to regain that permission? The issue is they run the railroad grade near Menards, which railroad grades are also a bit of in question, particularly as the railroads have sold their ownership to another company. So I think Schroeder's is really the issue of crossing to the north and figuring out a way to get that cross of 17. You can't cross the railroad tracks, but you can run the grade. So, or I'm sorry, the right of way adjacent to it. So it's a really sticky, I think there's not a lot of alternatives. So I will agree with the club in that, but might there be another way to address this that we, by making it known to the public that we're faced with this challenge.
Sure.
With that, if there's nothing further, we'll move on. Discuss and approve the city's organizational chart per 2.01.234A3.
The version that was included in your packet this evening is virtually unchanged from our previous meeting. I appreciate the friendly notice on the patrol sergeant numbers that we had added numbers to this iteration, most recent iteration of the chart that's been presented, so we'll have to get that amendment on there. There's also some discussion ongoing, as I had indicated in my email, pertaining to this being really the first step of a wage and equity review, market analysis, for a lack of a better word, on the non-union positions throughout the city. And one of the standardizations that we're looking at making at some point in the future would be the use of secretaries versus administrative assistants. So that likely will happen at some point in a future iteration, but at this point we're still calling for adoption of the chart. I also had some additional discussion with the interim fire chief regarding the assistant fire chief, and to restate the previous conversation that we had regarding budgetary availability, being that 91% of the wages of the assistant fire chief were charged to the inspection activities based upon the volume of that work to that function. And so there's also the budgetary considerations that I mentioned the last time, and really, and Josh can certainly speak to his perspective on this. But my conversation with him was really, this is a point in time discussion. That adoption today doesn't mean that we're not going to bring forward future modifications. In fact, I just referenced one related to the administrative assistants that are listed in the org chart today, as well as any other evolution of positions through retirements and other vacancies. So at this point, we're still calling for the same adoption of the organizational chart based upon the current city budget that's been adopted, as well as our staffing level needs at this time.
Tom?
Zach, would it help you to have additional time to hammer out these issues with the Police and Fire Commission? Because if so, I would make that motion that we table this until you hammer out all the details.
I would say it's not a function of a discussion with the Police and Fire Commission. They're certainly entitled to their opinion about staffing levels and public safety, but it's really the City Council and the city's administrative function to determine staffing levels for the respective departments at the city. So again, pending any further information, we've talked about justification, identifying needs, identifying budget, those types of things in case of the re-addition of a position within the fire department.
Gerald?
Okay, you just said it's the council's job to determine staffing. By approving this, is that the staffing that we're approving? Is that what this amounts to?
In effect, I think the interpretation that I have of the ordinances pertaining to the organizational chart, that this is squarely the administrator's responsibility, and therefore I have updated and presented a current version of the organizational chart. I would say through the adoption of an annual budget, you set staffing levels, right? The allocation of resources for various wages and benefits and departmental expenses. So at that point, that's where I'm referring to the role that the council has in that regard. But it is up for the administrator to present this to the council.
Okay, just a further question. It seems to me then that this chart tells us nothing about how many of these positions are filled or about what's actually budgeted.
Correct.
So we have to figure that out some other way.
That happens through the annual budget process, right? But in terms of the selection, placement, and the staffing requisition, let's say if there's a vacancy, the city has a procedure now in place for when those vacancies occur that the department head or the manager then would request the vacancy to be filled, and then we move through the city's selection and placement policy.
Well, I'm still puzzled from some time back on learning that we've had money in the budget for a public works director, which can be reallocated to a city engineer. But I can't understand then why we shouldn't have reallocated it to get a fire chief sooner.
Are you referring to the placement of selection and placement process? So in the case of the vacancy,
if the
of the fire
money's
chief,
in the budget, is what I'm saying.
Sure. And that was the commitment we made to the Police and Fire Commission, that as we got through the budget year, as in the case we are mid-year in the budget year, we have a much better understanding of unanticipated expenses, where they've arisen. We've got a much better trailing average of what our financial year looks like. So the commitment we made was, at this point in the year, we were going to review what that time frame could have been for placement. When we adopted the budget, we funded everything at a certain level. And yes, one could say that if there were vacancies elsewhere in the general fund, that we might be able to reallocate those funds. One example of that that I shared with the mayor today was we've just done a placement of a summer substitute firefighter, paramedic. And by doing that, we've run some preliminary numbers, and there can be about $10,000, maybe $15,000 in savings to our overtime, what would have otherwise been encumbered overtime expense. So by avoiding that cost, we're then potentially able to move up the selection and final placement of the fire chief. I don't have a date on what that materially looks like, because I just literally received the numbers at the end of last week, as Josh and I and Wendy have worked through trying to do some scenario planning on that. So I think at this point, we're looking at potentially accelerating the placement of the fire chief, if in fact the budget still looks in a positive situation.
Eileen?
So right now, we don't have a fire chief, is that correct?
We have an interim fire chief.
We have an interim fire chief?
Yep.
Hi, Josh.
Josh.
Okay, just clarifying for general public. So we have an interim fire chief. How is the department operating at the moment? If we have, where were you prior to being the interim fire chief, Josh?
I was the deputy chief on one of the crews.
You were the deputy, one of three, correct?
One of three crews. There's a crew that's short.
Okay.
My position now.
Okay, so you're the fire chief. So we're operating currently without an assistant fire chief
And without
Correct.
a deputy chief.
and without one deputy chief.
Correct.
How is the department operating? I mean, is it operating well? Do you find there's a definite lack of that position?
For sure. We haven't had management now. I just jumped into the role. I'm trying to figure it out on the fly. We had Tom. Tom had enough. I'm the next in line. We're trying to figure it out every day. Every day we're just trying to make it through.
Okay. Have you thrown your hat into the ring for fire chief?
There hasn't been a posting for it yet, so it's impossible to do that.
Okay. When are we posting that?
PFC will have a posting. In fact, I got the final version today, so I told Todd that he'd have it early this week for the commission to formally meet and accept applications and announce the posting. So we're within the window of time that was discussed when we met throughout April.
Okay, and it's my understanding too that the reason that it's not in the budget right now is because we had unexpected payout of retirement funds, benefits, that sort of thing. Is that correct?
You mean the placement of a permanent chief?
The placement of an assistant.
No, the assistant chief, the budget was for the 91% was charged to the inspections
Which is now
department.
still charged to the inspections, but it's a
Correct.
separate department.
Exactly. It wasn't a part of that department. Yep.
I see. Okay.
And I just want to reiterate the addition of a summer substitute firefighter paramedic that will be added to one of the crews, and the chief has the ability to move that person based upon summer vacation planning. When the crews are short, when there's a known shortage in the crews, we're able to plug that person in to ensure that there's the same level of firefighters and paramedics operating at the city, irregardless of the management situation at this time. And
Okay.
Josh is also working on shift, on duty, on days when he's on the fire chief for manning purposes.
Okay.
To clarify, we do have a summer sub starting tomorrow. He's starting to train. He's not a paramedic, so he doesn't meet our minimum qualifications for what we hire. He is filling in, but he is not qualified for full-time placement.
Okay. Thank you. I have a better understanding of both sides now. Thank you.
There are also some other budgetary issues that I guess we've lost with Teresa Lassick moving to City Hall, leaving that inspection department position open. That was charged to the fire department. Harry Whidden, the health inspector, that position's now gone. There's $20,000 there a year. Both Tom and Terry, the assistant chief and chief, they're both gone. There has to be money in the budget to fill these positions. I just don't know how there's not. Terry retired in February. We're now in almost July.
It's my understanding that there was benefits that continued to be paid out to him based on the leave that he had acquired, is that correct?
Yeah, this was all known and discussed throughout the
Right.
budget process last fall, that when there was a known retirement, that his last working day was going to be in February, but his run out of his sick leave and all the leave banks, as well as his VIBA and everything, was going to be, the soonest that the position would become available to be filled at that time was going to be first, like the 6th of October was the date at that point. But again, we're committed to accelerating that where we can. Josh has offered the health inspector has recently resigned, and those duties have now been absorbed by our full-time inspector. So there's a lot of moving parts. So I think, we want more information on the financial picture first and foremost to fill the fire chief permanently, and then subsequently, as we talk through justification, potentially to fill or recreate another position. Assistant chief was what it was called most recently. EMS administrator was called in the past. It was also called building inspector. I mean, there's a number of titles for that, what that position was. So a lot of arguments can be made about where that person was spending their time. Were they spending their time allocated to the fire department and assisting the chief? The chief was also working in inspections before. What percentage of their time? It's probably debatable. That's now been evaporated from the fire department. So there's a number of moving parts, again, I think, to the picture that have to be understood.
Ryan?
Yeah, this really, really is not an easy thing to talk about. I personally don't want to see our public safety services go down. But then I do look at the fact that when we talk about the 91% of the time allocated for the assistant chief, which was Tom Wadick, I don't know the level of supervision and oversight and duties that he was doing to the actual fire and EMS portion. So with those vacancies currently right now, this would be the time to make that adjustment. I think that we have a great staff level at the fire department. I appreciate those guys immensely, and we do need them. And I guess I would hope that in the future, if we do decide to pass this organizational chart the way that it is now, that Zach and the administrative staff would see that need and would create that position. Is that what you're kind of anticipating, Zach, or is that something that would go forward down the road?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 3 other ideas that are emerging in other departments, for example, that would all be given the same consideration as we go forward in the development of the 2022 budget. So without question, I mean, this is an evolutionary document, I believe. The fact that we haven't adopted one for some time is probably, goes without saying that we probably should have been having these discussions over time, but given other priorities and other needs and topics that have arisen for the day. But yeah, most certainly.
Our HR, Doreen, she is here today, right?
Yeah, Doreen is here. Yep.
I guess I'd like to hear from her if she's got some insight as to what she's talked to Josh about and the other department members and the needs of the city.
Doreen?
Is this on? Oh, okay, sorry.
Closer.
It's been a while. No, I've talked to Josh's department, and I've talked to Zach, and as Zach explained, this org chart has not been looked at for several years, so it's really a puzzle we're trying to put back together to make the most sense moving forward. Again, I think Zach's doing a great job working with everybody, filling in, getting their information, adding to this, and keeping it so it continues to evolve, because that's what it's going to take. This isn't something that's going to be fixed overnight, and there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of questions that still have to be asked and information to be gathered to make sure that it gets completed accurately, so everybody knows what needs to be done, make sure there's no gaps when it's complete, and then as things change, it keeps getting updated over and over. So right now, the main thing is, and I think Zach's done a really good job working with Josh and then also Lloyd to look at what are their needs, where we have the gaps been, so we don't make the same mistakes over and over. It is a time-consuming process, unfortunately, but they're going, we're working quickly as quickly as possible, and we're going to get to a really good end result. And I would think in the next, if not today, if you all agree on this is a first step. And then again, it's going to keep evolving. So I think they're in a very good spot. There's a lot of conversation happening.
With the conversation you've had, do you agree with the organizational chart the way it's presented?
It's not a matter of agreeing or disagreeing. Right now, this is current state. So these positions are what we have right now. So you can do org charts two different ways. You can do here's all the current positions and leave off the ones that are vacant, or we can put the vacant ones on as well. So we can do it either or. So there's, it just depends on what the administrator would like to do with the org chart.
Gerald.
I feel the need for an explanation of the terms assistant chief, deputy chief, and lieutenant. How do those all relate within the fire department?
I'll have Josh come up and give some explanation, but from an administrative perspective, a lot of it is in a matter of wordsmithing. Some departments use battalion chiefs, some use captains. There's a couple of other variety, for not saying for those exact positions, but within the rank and file. We choose to, all those members in the white boxes are all unionized members. So I think that's another distinction, that some departments have a non-union management tier, where I'm not saying our deputy chiefs would be non-union, but there's some variety there that occurs. The challenge for Rhinelander is there's not a ton of cities our size that have full-time career departments. So when you look at comparables and titling, you have to really look closely when you're looking at a wage and benefit comparison. So I think it's important just to remember that aspect too. But Josh can go into probably more specifically the titling component.
Yeah, the chief and the assistant chief are administration. They work days, 5 days a week. Deputy chief is basically like a patrol sergeant would be. They're in charge of their shift. There's 3 of them, 1 per each shift. And lieutenants are another officer that works underneath the deputy chief in their absence or helps them out with the daily duties.
Tom?
I have two questions, actually. Josh says that there's only 2 deputy chiefs, but there's 3 on here. Does this reflect what the end result is going to be and not current staffing numbers?
Yeah, while Josh has stepped up in the interim role, we've held our commitment to him was to retain his previous position should he not apply or be successful in the chief recruitment. So okay. Yeah, and because those positions are unionized, they're protected by the collective bargaining agreement. So any staffing level changes within the department would have to be generally negotiated for. Yeah.
Do we have a number of patrol sergeants to put in there?
I have the number written down. I mean, I've got the number that we need to put it in there.
Okay.
But there'd be, Josh, 4. Yep. So we'll add that as a friendly amendment to the chart.
The second question is, I apologize for my ignorance on how this works, how administrators put this together and all that, but it seems to me that there's a lot of discussion going on. Doreen says this is a ongoing thing, like a living document almost, where it's going to continue to change as things get settled.
Can I interject real quick?
Sure.
As we've seen, a lot of this stuff has sat stagnant for a very long time. With this administration, though, things move by far quicker and are more amicable. That being given, when you work with work product, you see a certain thing a certain day. We're within a certain process. A couple of the things we found out this year is we weren't ready to lose 2 chiefs, a chief and an assistant chief. They were not prepared. We didn't have a succession plan to put them into that. If we even looked at the job descriptions there were, we would have had 0 qualified candidates from within. So things had to change. That being the case, our pay grades and our pay scales need to change and they need to be looked at. There's significant things. We're not afraid to make those changes. We're not afraid to make those adjustments. But as you say, this is a living document. All of government is a living document. We're meant to make those changes when we see them a fit.
Right, makes sense.
it was mentioned that there's not many cities the size of Rhinelander that have full-time career fire departments. I don't believe that's the case, but the businesses in this community need the fire department. They rely on the fire department. The paper mill, if they burn down and there's not a full-time fire department, they will never come back. It's been stated many times. The reason that businesses are coming to town is because of our services. The reason that we have that dome, the reason that we have investors coming to town is because of us. If you're not going to invest in your departments, nobody's going to come here. You're asking for investors, but you don't want to invest in your departments or your employees.
And Josh, I want you to be made clear, the record clear on that my statement was for purposes of retitling and checking comparables. So if you were to look at the 600 cities and villages in Wisconsin that are in the, let's say, 7 to 10,000 population, there are fewer, there are probably, I will double check the number, but my gut tells me that there's probably more that don't have a full-time career fire department that do in that classification because they maybe administer it differently. So for the purposes of comparing compensation and organizational charts and structures, it becomes more challenging because you have limited comparables to look at from that perspective. It had nothing to do about value, and I hope that you maybe retract your statements that the city or the city council doesn't believe in investing in a full-time fire department, because that's not what the statement was.
Tom?
Listening to this the last 10, 15 minutes, it appears to me that you guys, both sides, have a lot of work to do before we actually have a workable chart. So I would reiterate my motion to table.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
No.
Nay.
Nay.
Roll call.
Thomas Kelly,
Aye.
Ryan Rossing,
No.
Eileen Daniel,
Nay.
Carrie Mikulowski,
Nay.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Nay.
David Holt,
Nay.
Andrew Larson.
No.
The motion fails. I'll accept the motion.
Rossing, I'm going to make a motion to approve the city's organizational chart 2.01.234A3.
Mikulowski, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Gerald?
Just how and when will we be informed about the evolution of this chart, as we're calling it, as things change over time?
Essentially, when there's substantive changes, Doreen maybe has something to offer as well. But at this point in time, this is what we're going to be recruiting and staffing for. The city engineer being the most probably important vacancy on the chart as it's presented this evening. But Doreen?
So as I indicated, that this chart is always going to change. So as an example, we just hired, starting tomorrow, a sub firefighter. They're not on this chart. Today, I just onboarded a new street maintenance worker individual. It shows 9 here. It's now 10 today. This is an evolving chart. You have the stability in the chart because you know where the departments report up to. You know what the current state is, but it's going to continue to change as time goes on, as Zach had indicated earlier, and I've also said this. This has been left unaddressed for many years, and we're doing the best we can to bring on people and also look at the job descriptions, make sure the job descriptions are current, and then also where they place within the org chart. This isn't an easy process because this has been left unaddressed for many years. So appreciate your patience with it.
Ryan?
Yeah, I just wanted to state my reason for making the motion is, for one, we just changed around and made the full-time building inspector zoning position. And I think it's time to get some definitive answers. I think I'm confident in the way that the leadership is set up right now. And by no means do I feel that we can't adjust this down the road if we need to. And we need to move forward at this point and adjust later if we need to adjust.
Eileen?
I would like to point out that we are coming up to our new budget season. I'm way looking forward to those work sessions. And I really do think that's a great opportunity, Josh, when we have our department work sessions to discuss the ongoing organizational chart as it relates to the fire department and working out the budget for that department.
With that, we'll ask for a roll call.
Tom Barnett,
Aye.
Andrew Larson,
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
Thomas Kelly,
No.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel,
Aye.
Ryan Rossing.
Aye.
The ayes have it, motion carries. Discussion action items under introduction new business. Discuss approve the alcohol beverage license taxi mobile home park license renewals for 2021 and 2022 licensing year, all approved by the police department. I'll accept a motion.
Rossing, motion to approve all alcohol licenses previously approved by the police department.
Daniel, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can we just point of clarification? There are at least 2 in the renewals that will require some concern. Maybe Robbie wants to speak to 2 of them.
Robbie, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Robbie Davister, the new building inspector and zoning administrator. We have a few issues that we're going to take care of them now, because I'm not going to run them down later. Sunset Bar at 135 West Reeves Street. They don't have trash cans, and they've been throwing the trash just behind the building. And our ordinance clearly states that they have to have trash receptacles. They also own the building to the east, 131, and they have a structure that was added to the back of their building that's in the city's right-of-way. We have Porky's at 127 Reeves. They also have a structure that's placed in the right-of-way, and they have a ladder that's going to the second story that people have been seen climbing in and out of. Sackett's at 66 North Brown Street. We're going to hold them to cleaning up that building. Roof, windows, siding, interior work. The kitchen's got to pass, and they're going to need some engineering. And those are the 3 that I have. Thank you.
Tom?
You said the Sunset Bar on Rives Street is, can you tell me exactly where that is?
That is on the corner of Rives and
Anderson.
Is it, I mean, but is it that bar that's by that, the feed store there? Like just a little ways from there?
no, if you're on the street that Tilly's is on, which is Reeves, the opposite end of the block, the very end.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Okay.
And they also own the next building, and I don't have that, the lady's name that's on it, but they own those 2 buildings, 135 and 131, both owned by the same person.
I was actually stopped by Michelle from Latitudes, who owns Latitudes, and she had told me that she got a third-party garbage collector to pick up her garbage, and she hadn't seen the receptacle delivered for 3 weeks when she got the service. She found out that this particular bar took that receptacle and had been throwing beer cans and bottles in it this whole time. So that seems to be a real problem there.
Yes, the whole right-of-way back there is a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Tilly's also has 2 dumpsters back there. They have to lock them.
Yeah.
They have to keep them locked until the garbage truck comes and unlock them.
I have a question.
Ryan.
Do you think we should not approve some of these licenses that some of these violations are taking place? Like sunsets?
I would be looking for the motion that they all get approved with, falling in compliance with all the city ordinances and building codes, occupancy, depending on who we're talking about.
I believe that goes without saying. Am I correct? No? All right.
Oh, yes, two.
Just to clear the record, you have the ability to not grant a liquor license based upon violation of a city ordinance, but we haven't cited these people yet. I mean, that's what he's indicating to you that he's going to do. He will cite them. So their license applications, other than the ones we've previously identified, which up till today, we had previously identified Sackett's, and they're here tonight, and I'm sure they're going to speak. But the other ones we identified basically today, we'll probably cite them. So if you wanted to say something that you want to withhold these licenses, you could do that, but understand that come July 1st, if they had it all cleaned up already, they really haven't violated the law, and that's presupposing that they're guilty. And we have this thing in the United States about innocence until proven guilty. So what I was trying to indirectly say is prejudging is probably not a good cause, but violation, once we issue the citation and the citation is not rectified, then you certainly could have the withdrawal of their license or taking away their license for violation, which I think would be a much better procedure because it would follow the law. It's not presupposing guilt. And I would think that would be a preferable way to proceed rather than presupposing. The other problem you have is you may have had a belief by these organizations that that's not an issue because it's been going on for a long period of time. So when you're changing policy, especially when you're dealing with somebody's livelihood, it's always good to have a period of time where you're telling them we're going to do this, you do it, and then if they don't obey, then you take the appropriate actions. Now that's my philosophy, but I also think that's the philosophy of most of the laws, and I think it's the philosophy of your ordinance as I read it.
That being the case, we have a motion on the floor, and it's seconded.
Somebody second my motion?
Yeah.
We do already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Eileen did
Eileen.
it, Tom.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Discuss and approve Class B and Class C wine alcohol beverage licensing for Styles by Sarah K. LLC, DBA Lotus Salon and Supply. Oh. No, this is B.
I'll make a motion to approve Class B beer and Class C wine alcohol beverage license for Style by Sarah K. LLC, doing business as Lotus Salon and Spa, Sarah Wessenberg as agent.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Tom?
Yeah, we already approved her.
We approved the renewals. This is a new license.
Well, this is new here and we approved it.
No. A says renewals.
Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it.
Again, so the record's straight and we understand what Tom was asking, there's two sets of licenses. There was a set of licenses for renewal license, and then there was one license that was a new license. You approved the renewals, and then this last vote, you approved the new license. That's why there was two separate motions.
And actually, that just makes it more confusing because C is
Andy.
what's ND? Yeah, each one of them are listed as separate. Discuss and approve Class A in
Of the new license. are
Class B
separate.
liquor alcohol beverage license for Sackett Bar and Grill LLC. Michael Osterdahl is the agent.
I'll make a motion to approve Class A beer and Class B liquor alcohol beverage license for Sackett's Bar and Grill LLC, Michael E. Osterdahl as agent.
Holt, I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Tom?
I would ask our city inspector, knowing the condition of Sackett's Bar and Grill, with the granting of the liquor license, is that particular establishment ready to open and do business, or is there still work that needs to be done before they can do that?
Please stand at the mic. It gets recorded then.
They're nowhere near ready to open.
Okay.
How far down the road, I don't know. That's gonna be set by Michael.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All those in favor?
Just, let me speak up, I'm sorry, Chris. So what you've just heard the building inspector say is they're not really capable of getting a license right now. Now, you could approve a license condition on them being able to, or you could wait till they're able and then reconsider this motion to grant them a license. But what you really can't do tonight is grant them a license because they don't meet the statutory requirements for getting a license at this point. I hope that makes sense.
Tom?
That's why I made the motion, so that we could have that discussion, and why I asked the city inspector how close they were to actually getting ready to open, because I saw it as kind of premature to get a liquor license if, by his previous statement, they're nowhere near ready to be open anyway. So that's where I'm confused.
Tom?
I want Steve to ask, can you make this a motion contingent upon satisfaction with the inspection department?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says you can't, but the people from Sackett's would have to understand that you really haven't approved a liquor license. You've approved a liquor license based on conditions, and there really is no such thing as a conditional liquor license. But you've given them basically a vote of confidence that if they meet the conditions, they're going to get a license. That's what you would be saying. You still may have to vote again, Tom. And, yeah. But we meet every 2 weeks, so.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion contingent upon Sackett's being able to apply for a license.
I'll second that.
We have a motion on the amendment that they get their license contingent upon being able to apply for the license and having their in order. Gerald?
I guess I'm opposed to putting contingency on it because I think we should just be waiting till they're ready before we approve anything.
Understood? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
No.
That was Gerald with the no. All right, now back to the original motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Approve Class B liquor, Class B beer and Class C wine alcohol beverage license for the Rev Company, LLC. Jesse Steinmetz is the agent.
Barnett, I will make a motion to approve Class B beer and Class C wine alcohol beverage license for the Reeve Company, LLC, Jesse Steinmetz as agent.
Holt, I'll second that.
There's a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Where is this?
Right next to the Dinky Diner down in, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Discuss and approve Resolution 20-19 or 2021-19 to allow Oneida County Humane Society to voluntarily become a dog licensing collecting official for the city.
As a point of background on this, many of you probably recall the conversations we had with the Humane Society at the end of the year regarding the 2021 contract. They've, after doing some additional research and exploration of the topic, they've worked with the county treasurer's office to, or the clerk's office, I'm not sure which, but to issue licenses, being acting an agent essentially for municipalities around the county. So it's I think a good thing that they've now come to us asking for the ability to do so on our behalf, as was per the agreement that we negotiated with them and that council approved at the beginning of this year.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-19 to allow the United County Humane Society to voluntarily become a dog license collecting official for the city.
Rossi, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Andrew?
Do they keep the profits?
The fee still has to be remitted to the county, as would be the case if we were to issue the license here. There's a processing fee that they're entitled to, and I don't remember what that percentage is. A real small amount that they're allowed to keep. Yeah, but it wouldn't change under this ordinance.
All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Gerald?
A resolution.
I have some questions about the wording.
Okay.
Item 2 in the resolved will provide licenses. I guess what we mean is issue the licenses.
Right. Let me just get to that point and where your question specific. Repeat that, Gerald, please.
I was trying to. The word "provide" didn't make sense to me there, but if it means issue, I guess that's.
Yeah. And this was a resolution that was drafted by the county clerk, and so we didn't make any modifications to it before it came to us. Whether it's drafted by the corporation council or us, I'm not sure. Not to say that we can't make changes to it, but I would say "will provide" is sort of the spirit of what you just indicated.
What does voluntary mean in the previous line?
That I think gets to the heart of what this is about. That they're doing so voluntarily. They're in agreement with the city to provide that, versus imposing involuntarily or unilaterally being the agent for the city. It's my understanding that we still will be providing this service to the public. It's just they're going to be an agent on our behalf.
Any further discussion?
I just the wording in the first line of number 1 there is pretty convoluted. I guess it says what it means, but why not just say City Council appoints the United County Humane Society as a voluntary dog license collecting official?
Because it's really the county's responsibility. We're just approving that they do it. Otherwise, it really is the county's ultimate responsibility. That's why it's there that way.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Update from the Development of Public Forums and Records Management.
This is just an FYI item. If you recall, last year through CARES Act money, which was the state's initial stimulus on municipal or COVID-related relief initiatives, we purchased a software called Laserfiche. General Code is the vendor. And since that time, city staff and I have worked diligently to get up to speed. There's quite a bit of training in the program, so I commend staff for taking on this additional responsibility and training. And really the intent is to make people's experiences and interactions with city government much more self-service. Much of the world is online these days, being able to do business online, and the city of Rhinelander didn't have a ton of ways for us to do that because we didn't have a good tool that allowed us to do so. So the inspection office has been able to launch online permit applications for just about all their permits, trying to create, again, a human contactless experience, or at least a more efficient experience. Same goes for paying those permits. Before, we took just checking cash. We're now taking credit cards for those applications in the case of the inspection office. In case of the utility department, we're now doing service change requests and a number of other forms through the utility office online. Again, being more efficient, not having to push paper and push signatures back and forth. People can do this all online. As it relates to the as well as the ethics form. So a reminder to all of you, you got to declare your ethics or follow the ethics declaration if you have any ethics, as well as all city employees. We put that on Laserfiche as well. And it's a pretty efficient, if you have done it already yourselves, pretty efficient, easy to use platform. It takes a lot on the back end. You know, it's like the 80% you don't see. You see the 20% of the work. So the one area that we're working through, and the clerk's office in coordination with Doreen and HR, the launch of the Nicolay internship program. And so we're looking at getting a bit more organized in the areas of records management. We're trying to create most of our employee forms and employee employment files to be stored in this platform. It's very secure. And so we're going to be continuing to map out and monitor how we're going to be able to implement historical records management, bringing that into the software. That's part of it. The other part of it is going forward, trying to create a dividing line where all of our activities and documents that from a certain point forward get stored in the platform. So overall, it's made us, where we've been able to implement it, quite a bit more efficient. And I think it's been a good use of city funds. We'll have to pay for it going forward. So this has been our real trial year to make sure that we're going to be able to make good use of the software and the platform in the interim. So that I guess would be an update. I'm happy to answer any questions. We'll be sharing more of a press release on this as more of the forms get launched. But I think we're pretty much at a good stage where people have had some good interaction with the platform.
I'd like to thank city staff also for their work on this. Once again, it's been a nice implementation. It's worked smoothly. When we've worked it, we worked some of the bugs out. It's been good. Any questions? All right, moving forward. Update on the sustainability plan implementation.
Again, just another FYI for all of you, since this has been referred to have updates as periodically on our council agendas. Last week, Jim Gossage and I met with our Focus on Energy rep. The governments and nonprofits have some ability to take advantage of the Focus on Energy rebates that consumers get to and businesses get to take advantage of. So Jim put in quite a bit of effort to inventory, as you heard at the last council meeting, all the fixtures at the wastewater and well sites. Here at City Hall, we're going to be beginning a process to take a look at inventorying all the fixtures and all the various opportunities for participation within that program. Almost every fixture in the city, unless it's been a new construction, is not LED. So almost instantly there's some savings, probably a year payback if we can afford to do the labor ourselves on the conversion of these fixtures. So we're going to continue to press into that. We've got a good amount of information from our rep. We have until the end of the year to take advantage of this current year's rebate incentives. And so we'll share more of an expanded update with all of you at a future council meeting. But it's encouraging to know that we've got some low-hanging fruit really to tackle with this initiative.
Any questions? All right, moving forward. Discuss and approve the public arts guidelines and policy. This was an add-on in your packet.
Yeah, you didn't receive this in advance of the meeting because really it's been a work in progress, marching up even to the end of last week. There's been a group of community members, and Tom Barnett's been a part of that group that's come together to talk about public art and developing some form of guidelines and policy for public art. Last week I had a discussion with Art Start, and Ashley was here. Ashley still is here. And I think, in some discussion with them, there's probably no better community partner to assist the city in launching and helping oversee and manage this initiative. Not necessarily delegating full authority, but delegating some of the call for entries that might exist for art installations, whether it's murals or sculpture or, you name it. I guess it really could be just about anything. So I'm leaving this with you as far as a draft policy. Welcome your feedback and input. We don't need to hurry up and adopt this, but at the same time, if we want to get moving on some form of call for entries, it'd be great to have some of this adopted. And what I'd like to see from the council is a request or a direction for me to negotiate with Art Start some form of engagement, terms of engagement, so we can bring back a scope of work. We'd expect that this work would take the course of the rest of the year. One of the outcomes of this engagement with Art Start would be to stand up a public art commission, which would ultimately meet to review and vet the submissions that get submitted. And then ultimately the council would have an authority either as a final approval or as an appeal approval, appellate sort of situation in the case of public art in the community. So, and of course we'd look at budgetarily, how can we afford to implement any sort of a relationship with Art Start.
Eileen?
My question is, it's called the Rhinelander Arts Committee. Is this a city committee or is this a public foundation?
It's a great question. You know, at this point, it remains to be established. I think the intent as I understood the spirit of the discussions thus far, is to really institutionalize this, so it isn't an initiative just of this council or of this mayor administration, that it would live beyond those tenured positions. So I think that would be the idea, is that it would become a standing committee or commission within the city, but it's ultimately up to this group what it wishes. It would be independent of the council, though, in that the members wouldn't necessarily get appointed by the council. They could, but I mean, those are things that still have to be determined. So it'd be a standalone group with participation generally by city staff and the partner being Art Start.
4 years ago, I think David Holtz had in a committee meeting that had the art that was public art and really wanted to push for it. And since we've been here 3.5 years, going on 4 years, we've not made the movement forward in finding the entity to make sure that this sort of happens. That being the case, they convened out of interest, and it was out of interest from murals that started putting them together. Now they're looking to form the body that would actually get any of it done. Not yet to be determined, but I would accept a motion to direct Zach to work on the work product of moving towards a commission, an art commission or committee that the city would see fit. But that way, at least he can devote his time to that.
Barnett, I would like to make a motion to direct Zach to work with the Arts Commission to draft a policy.
Holt, I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just think we need to be really clear. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about committees a while back, and, you know, we decided not to operate on a committee sort of basis. And so if it's a commission, it's a commission. So a commission involves other members of the community, that sort of thing. So let's just be very, very clear on when we're setting this up, what the expectations are as far as the council goes and city staff. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Update on, discuss and approve the estimate from the municipal code for the incorporation of the changes of the zoning code and city's municipal code. This is the last page in your packet, I believe. Yeah. It was a lot of work done. Now it's a lot of work to make it available to everybody else.
Barnett, I will make a motion to approve the estimate from Municode for the incorporation to changes to the zoning code of the city's municipal code.
Please state the dollar amount. I believe it's on there, isn't it?
$7,370.
Thank you.
Holt, I'll second that.
There's a second. Gerald?
What's the general procedure for updating our ordinances? If we just pass something that changes one paragraph, do we do that ourselves without hiring someone? Or do we have to hire someone to do any changes?
I'll have Teresa maybe weigh in here, but my understanding is on a quarterly or a semi-regular basis, Municode takes all the ordinances and text amendments that we've passed and adopts them. Given, as you can tell, the volume of changes here that's outside the scope of our regular maintenance agreement with Municode, Some cities would opt to not use some form of tool. I can say that my experience with MuniCode here has been really positive, so it's worth the effort. Plus, any developer that's looking for the parameters, in addition to going to GIS for zoning and other things, would also go here to make sure that they've got ready access to the text versus accepting a copy. So I don't know what the annual maintenance fee is off the top of my head, or how many changes they'll allow, but this was well outside that scope.
I'll let Gerald finish before
Well,
I go
as
move
you
on.
know, I think there's a lot of changes that need to be made to that zoning code. And I wouldn't be in favor of spending money like this before at least the planning commission has another chance to come back with whatever recommendations are needed. We'd have to do the whole thing twice otherwise.
Yeah, when you deal with this company, and I've dealt with them for years in different surroundings, and by far, this is the best company out there. I research municipal codes all over the state of Wisconsin, and this is by far the best one because they update quite rapidly as long as you give them the material. So the updating service, which is the changing periodic, like we changed an ordinance a month ago, we send that in, it updates. What this is covering, and which they will not do in their maintenance program, is they will not take a whole division or section of your code. You have to pay for separately, because that's a lot of work, because they have to go and pick out all the other places in the code that ties back into that. And the other thing that's good about the service is they do it all over the state, so they'll pick out things that are inconsistent, and they'll tell us about them too. They'll get back to us on things that, I wish they always check spelling and stuff too, but they don't always do that. If you misspell, they'll put it in misspelled. I found that to be true. But I would suggest that this is something that if you're going to, well, this one is valuable because anybody looking to develop in the city has to have the most current zoning code. And so this is the most current zoning code. I mean, even I, shame on me, but made the mistake of looking at the old zoning code to answer a question, because I went on Muni Code to look up the zoning code rather than looking at the new code that was just adopted, and I made a misstatement based on the old code. So this one I hope, because it may save you a lot of embarrassment by bringing this one up to date, because that's what people use, and that creates the issue. So I hope you go ahead with this.
I understand your need for clarification is if we're going to pay $7,300 now, and if there was pages of changes, would we be paying for it again? That is your question, correct?
Yeah.
Teresa, do you have that answer?
I don't have a definite answer, but this was just based on what we had sent them. So if there's a bunch of changes, that isn't part of this quote. It would have to be requoted, but at this point, what we had was what was sent in, that was the cost.
And if the changes are substantive to the ones we've talked about, where some of the clarification is really a text modification, I'd suspect they would be more in line with the routine updates. This is a wholesale removal and replace of the zoning code in there. But we can, I mean, based upon to Steve's point, we want to get this updated in there. However, we're at the mercy of their schedule too, so it may work just as well to the benefit that you offer on that they won't have this done by the time they get to it. The planning commission gets to it.
Call roll.
Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel.
Aye.
Ryan Rossing.
Aye.
Gerald Anderson.
Nay.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
Andrew Larson.
Aye.
Thomas Kelly.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Update on Hodag Park improvements.
Since the announcement of the $100,000 pledge that was made by a community member, we've had some discussion with other potential donors. And since that time, we've also been working with the city's engineer on this topic, MSA, been getting some project updates in our council packets. We're probably within a week of getting an initial scope from them as to a conceptual design. We're tentatively working within a project budget of $300,000 to $400,000 for the total improvements, and that includes the soft costs of the design and any other activities. So given the council's initial pledge of about $100,000 plus the donation, and then the fundraising the capital campaign that's ongoing, plus the foundation's fund that's currently in existence, that'll put us between that $300,000 and $400,000 range. So far, so good in terms of that, and I think we're pleased to see some community reaction to the fundraising effort. We'll have more to come, I think, as we get in front of more donors, but that's really the update. We'd expect that we would bring that concept and share it with all of you, and then potentially get some form of approval on that concept as we go forward to make sure we're working off the right design and everyone has that information.
One quick question for Zach. In the off chance that people get real generous and we have a lot of excess dollars, we can do more, correct?
Right. And some have asked about the vision, recognizing that the city would like to probably do more than just the performance or amphitheater area. And really, if the budget scales because of, they're operating off of construction costs and materials being at a certain level, we might be able to take some of that surplus and jumpstart another effort, such as a pavilion or amphitheater, or pavilion next to the amphitheater there as well.
Moving on, discussing the parameters for the public property parks and facilities naming policy.
I understand there's some history related to the naming of public features within the city. This could be as expansive as naming streets and public waterways, and that's not what I'm exactly talking about here today. Really specific to city parks and city grounds. There's a number of policies that I've been able to review since this topic has come up, at least for my sake. It's my hope to get a listing of definitions of what we're actually talking about here. Are we talking about benches and things, or are we talking about more of the substantial pieces? In the case of the amphitheater at Hodag Park, would we welcome a naming opportunity there, for example? It seems customary that the facility donation, in my experience, that at least 50% of the asset get paid for before you start getting into donations. I would think even higher than that, but no less than 50%. And then that there would be some form of naming process and approval by the council, or at least delegated approval. If it's benches, we probably don't want to bring the benches in front of every council meeting, but if we're talking more of our substantial features, fields, ball fields, pickleball courts, those types of things, those really should be coming before the council or at least city staff at some level. So I bring that up, I put it on the agenda really just to get feedback if there had been any strong feelings on this. Steve and I have had some conversation about what this can look like as it relates to, reconciling some of the past decisions. Again, like pickleball, for example, might there be, as they go forward, are there other improvements they want to make that would have to get approval by the council? If it's benches or, in the case of the museum is another example, right, that people can name exhibits and that type of thing. So anyway, just was curious if there had been any strong feelings about the ability to name public assets that might be donated to the city.
Tom?
I think naming rights does have a strong rooted history in Rhinelander. There's a lot of things that are named after people who have generously donated to have things built or fixed, per se. But I do feel that it's a slippery slope. We could have, names on pretty much everything in here. So I would strongly be appreciative of certain parameters that need to be met before something gets named, specifically percentage of the donation, that the amount that's donated should have some sort of weight on naming rights. I do feel that it's a great way to honor those people that generously give, but like I said, it could easily become a slippery slope too.
And also, just so you know, when you get these discussion items, as you have feelings too, you can always reach out to the administrative staff as far as for direction. A good portion of this is collecting some of that, you know, what the thought processes are moving into the next steps. Discuss and approve the scoping of a hotel needs study to be funded from the room tax. This is brought to me by myself. There was a proposal that was put in your packet, and I would look for a motion to be able to move on this. So,
Rossing, I'll make a motion to approve a hotel needs study to be funded from room tax.
Holt, I'll second that.
we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Yeah, I liked the comment earlier at the start of the meeting. I think hotel, I think there is a need. I think there's some opportunity to capitalize on a new structure, new hotel, beds for people to sleep in, come and visit, spend money, recreate, that kind of stuff. So I would hope that we would approve this.
Yeah, as we move through venturing down different lanes and even adjusting org charts and everything else, economic development is one of the areas that it's hard to work in, and hard to work in many different places. So when we have a partner or somebody who says that this is necessity and to look that way, looking for city support when it comes to where we can put it is key. Eileen?
I do appreciate the comments that were made earlier in the public speaker portion of our meeting. However, in the interest of keeping things transparent and above board, I do recommend that we get at least one or two more estimates from other reputable companies, just to make, I mean, it's one thing to say they're all about the same, they're all going to cost about the same. However, it might behoove us to get a few more estimates from a few more other companies in a timely manner. I also appreciate the comment about timeliness and losing a construction season, but we want to make sure that we're doing these sorts of things above board, transparent, and right.
Given the motion on the table, would you like to amend that to say an open day period of 5 days or 5 business days, and then he can move forward with the one that's there? Or how would you like to word that? Because when you say timely matter, yet I know it is different, and it's different also than when if a developer picks it up and then when they move on it. If they were to ask for TIF money, we would have to build a TIF, and I'm not saying that otherwise. I'm just saying this is the study portion that arms the city with, yes, we need one, and then you put out the rest of those calls. And once again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to clarify what's timely.
How long does it take to do, or to reach out to somebody else?
Yeah, my suggestion would be to solicit 1 to 2 more and really just make a thorough analysis. You know, Jeff's got experience in commissioning this at the United County Economic Development Corporation. I've had some past hotel experience when we commissioned them where I previously was at. So I think between that experience, we can make it educated. I do agree that it'd be nice to have one more comparison. I've not worked with this individual. I've met them and am impressed with their experience. I think the price is reasonable. In fact, we were able to negotiate a slight reduction in their fee based upon some additional information we gave them about availability of market information, really from Three Lakes when they did that, and then somebody else paying for a STAR report. So I think, you know, we can continue to talk about the potential options of soliciting another one. I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 other firms that probably throw them at us.
Okay, so let's amend it to say, boy, I hate this part.
You've just given the direction. I mean, I don't think you have to amend the motion.
Okay.
I mean, the direction's been given by the council that you don't want to see just one vote, one
right
bid. You want to see several, and you won't vote unless there's several, so.
But we haven't, but didn't somebody make a motion to approve?
To do the study, but he's going to go out and get the bids.
No, it was approved.
I said motion to approve hotel needs study.
Okay.
Funded by the room tax.
Funded by room tax, yes.
but not necessarily this one as provided. Hey, there
Correct.
we go. Gotcha.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Closed session, if necessary, to convene into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties and or investing in public funds or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The discussion involved terms of development agreement with the Riverview Estates.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session for the above stated purpose.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. All,
call.
Roll call. Every time.
Larson?
Aye.
Andrew Larson? Sorry. Thomas Kelly?
Aye.
Eileen Daniel?
Aye.
Thomas Barnett?
Aye.
Gerald Anderson?
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski?
Aye.
Ryan Rossing?
Aye.
David Holt?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. We'll convene in closed session in 2 minutes in the back room. In executive.
Have these guys on Zoom, so.
Oh, never mind.
I don't know if I can get that on there.
All right. Hold on.
Oh, it won't?
We're all controlled by Hollywood. Living proof. He's telling us when to turn on the mic and whatnot. We're back in open session.
All right, Rossing, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city staff to proceed with the creation of a developer's agreement to implement the Riverview project with the upper limit of 1.6 million with look-back provisions.
Daniel, second.
There's a motion and a second. This is a good period of time, but all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. With that, despite any future agenda items, we have come to the end of our packet. And is there anything anybody wants to add, or they can get a hold of Teresa, Zach, or myself? With that, we're adjourned. Yeah.